Okay, hello everyone. This is a presentation and introduction to Displaced Grid, an advanced hotkey layout for Warcraft 3, plus additional UX modules which I designed to improve the quality and speed of your interface. When you think about it, games like Dota 2, games like StarCraft 2, which is also a pretty old game by today's standards, these games have fantastic interfaces. Like top-notch. There is not a single game that has a better interface than StarCraft 2. Also ironic because this is also a Blizzard's game, just like Warcraft 3. And Warcraft 3, because it's so old, has very little features which are a no-brainer for a player of today. And today I'm going to go through all these features one by one. I'm going to present a layout, Displaced Grid layout. It's a layout basically inspired by the work of Jack Attack and his team, if you're familiar with StarCraft 2 people, and his work on the core and the core light, which I use quite extensively in my days. And Displaced Grid was somewhat influenced by that design, especially the control groups, and we'll go through that shortly. Another thing that is important is the modules, and the modules are effectively cheats in a way, so you shouldn't be using those modules in a real game because they're pretty much macros, and macros are against EULA. But the way they're designed to showcase what's possible without even getting under the hood of the game. So I'm not reading any memory, we're not reading any API calls or anything of this nature. Everything is done. Effectively, the modules don't even interact with the game directly, they interact with the screen, and the fact that we have the game on screen is just a happy coincidence. So it's a very clever design. I'm going to showcase it how it's done. Then we're going to discuss the interfaces as a whole, game design as a whole, and we're going to discuss the philosophy behind all this work, because it's a bit controversial for sure. It's a bit controversial because, again, on one hand, the modules are, you can use that as a cheat. But on the other hand, they're so necessary that it doesn't even feel like cheating. It feels like it should be in the core gameplay, in the core game. And my hope that by the end of this, my work is outdated. So what I want to do personally is to spread the word around and retire this work in a way that Blizzard actually implements, if not most, but at least some of these quality of life features, so everyone within that community can actually enjoy a better game. Let me just give you a brief rundown what we're going to be discussing today. What is Displaced Grid? Displaced Grid is a layout that is on top of grid. If you take a very cautious and attentive look at this keyboard that is on the bottom of your page, you will see that it's just basic Blizzard's grid. And we're going to discuss very briefly why that is a bad design. And Displaced Grid is a layer on top. Why it's a layer? We are using an auto hotkey script to basically remap our hotkeys. And I know you might think, look, there are tons of people who've already done the auto hotkey remapping. Trust me, this is different. With the modules, again, I mentioned that it's a bit controversial, but in my opinion, these types of functionalities have to be in the core game. So first off, we do have quick casts. Quick casts for abilities and also for items. In Warcraft 3, that is a meaningful difference between abilities and items, and I'm going to explain why. So most games like Dota 2, League of Legends, StarCraft 2 even, ironically, these games already have quick casts. So what is a quick cast? You press an ability on your Q or your E, and it fires instantly at the cursor position. So where your cursor is, it will fire immediately. And you can see on this little clip, the Blood Mage casts all of his abilities on the Paladin without this select target cursor being present ever. So you just press the button and it fires immediately. Actually, very important to note that this functionality is in Warcraft 3 Reforged. So it's not even my module. I haven't developed it. This is enabled by Blizzard. You have to do some voodoo magic of divine intellect to enable it, and it doesn't work exactly as it would be working in StarCraft 2 because it's still kind of underdeveloped in my opinion, but it does work. However, for some reason, quick casts don't work for items. Why is that? Nobody knows. So I started with that. Like why I can quick cast my abilities, but I can't quick cast my items. Doesn't make any sense to me. And it still doesn't make any sense. So I started tinkering with extra software, auto hotkey in my case. And basically I developed this module so players can have this functionality in the core game. Now, should we have this functionality? Well, that's the controversial part, because at one hand, Blizzard clearly tried to implement quick casts into the game, into Reforged at least. It doesn't exist in Frozen Throne. But on the other hand, it doesn't exist for items. So how come? In my opinion, they just didn't develop it because they didn't have the money or time and didn't bother. So this is the module for that. Item ability fires immediately on key activation at the cursor. No mouse click required. The third module is very interesting. It synergizes very well with the previous two, with quick casts. Because what it allows you to effectively just press whatever button for your ability, and it will repeatedly fire, which makes it extremely useful for rapid firing ability. In StarCraft 2, that would be called rapid firing an ability. In Warcraft 3, this functionality does not exist, so I decided, why not? Why don't we just add this into the base of the game? Because I used to play StarCraft at Masters level, and I used the rapid fire and quick cast functionalities on my own, and that's extremely useful. The fourth module is shift queuing items. So I don't know, is that just me? But for some reason, in Warcraft 3, you can't shift queue items. So you can shift queue abilities. You just press shift, you hold down the shift, and you can just click with your left mouse button, and you can shift queue as many abilities as you want. But for some reason, with items, it doesn't work. You have to let go of the shift key every time you need to shift queue another item. So now it's implemented, it synergizes well with the entire pack. The fifth module is self-target cast. You can call it self-cast or alt cast or alt double cast. It's effectively the same thing, just under a different umbrella and a different name. You hold down your alt key and you can self-cast whatever you want. Again, most games, especially MOBAs, they already have this functionality on default because that helps immensely with in-battle control. And in Warcraft 3, that functionality makes a lot more sense, even more than a MOBA. In a MOBA, because in Warcraft 3 you have a bunch of units on your screen, which creates this visual clutter, and sometimes you just need to self-dispel, or sometimes you need to self-Yules, or what is called Tornado, Cyclone. So basically there are some skills that definitely benefit from being immediately applied onto the caster. 1, 2, 3. Sixth one is command multiple groups. I think this is very controversial, and I'm pretty confident that multiple people before me have implemented something like this. This is something that, again, StarCraft 2 does naturally, because in StarCraft 2, you can just select a bunch of units and send them all to attack or to move or to cast. In Warcraft 3, again, you can't do that. In Warcraft 3, you have to, and in StarCraft Brood War as well, you have to box 12 units at a time and click to issue a command of some sort. Then you box another 2 units at a time and you click to do maybe the same action. For example, if you have 50 units, you have to box, send, box, send, box, send, box, send, and then you will have 2 units left, which you again have to box and send the 2 units because they are leftover units. With command multiple groups, you can issue an attack, a move, or even a cast command to all the designated control groups at once. The way it's currently designed, it's just for 4 control groups. I don't see there is any practicality to have it for 5 control groups or for 3 control groups. I think 4 is the sweet spot, but you can change that. And Yeah, it will issue a command. You just have to hold down the caps lock. You hold down the caps lock and you issue a command instantly for all the 4 groups in a reverse order. So it goes control group 4, control group 3, control group 2, and control group 1. So you end up with the control group 1 selected after this module has finished. This is an obvious macro. So again, there is some controversy around that, pretty sure. But if you're using it to, let's say, play through the campaign, that is an immense value. Like I played through the campaign just recently. It's insane how just faster you play, especially when you combine with all that stuff. Let me just drop into the game and I will showcase it here. I'm holding down caps lock and I press spacebar because spacebar in Displaced Grid is your attack command. And I can issue my command to all these units because these are my 4 control groups. Press, 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 press. Now I can just hold caps lock and issue a command. This also works with mouse, but also works with heroes and abilities, which is extremely valuable, especially for undead, because you can just think about it. Coil, Nova, Impale, and the Swarm, they're on the same hotkey. So you can just hold caps lock, and if you distribute your heroes across different control groups, you can just fire all these abilities at once. And let me demonstrate that to you with these heroes. You see? So, and you can just manipulate your army much faster. Again, should you be able to is a different question. It's a game design question, but I'm just giving you the tool. Can you also map hack with this new keyboard? No, this is just an auto hotkey script. It doesn't read any memory or anything like this. In fact, again, it doesn't even technically interact with it doesn't even interact with the game. Okay, so the second to last module is the camera hotkeys. So camera hotkeys, again, is a normal, absolutely normal functionality for any contemporary game of today, or even StarCraft II has it as a core feature, which is a 2010 game, 12 years old, right? Is it 10 or 11? I don't remember. This module is actually very simple. It double clicks control group. So you press, let's say, 2 for a control group, and it double taps it instantly. So that makes it very fast to select certain controls for any reason that you might want. I think this might have a lot of applications for custom games, especially. I can even see how in Dota 1, you could just, instead of double tapping your hero, you can just one tap it and will instantly pan your camera at your hero and select it. I think some people will find it useful. Gonna be my second hotkey. This is gonna be my third hotkey. And if I want to scroll through these hotkeys instantly, I can just see I'm just pressing it once. You can see on the keyboard outline down below that I'm only pressing it once, and it instantly double taps the thing. I'm pretty sure some people will find this functionality useful. At the very least, it does showcase for what's possible. Quick drop items. This is actually really funny, but none of the games that I'm aware of allow you to manipulate your backpack or inventory solely with keyboard manipulation. So most of the time, almost all the time, the way you have to manipulate your inventory items, you just drag something and drop it on something. I'm a very jaded person because I played StarCraft II with the core light layout, and I got really used to it because it does increase your APM by like 50 to 70%. With Warcraft 3 being so item heavy kind of game, manipulating everything through your keyboard but not being able to manipulate your inventory just using your keyboard kind of sucked, in my opinion. So I really wanted to add some sort of hotkey so I can just press the hotkey and let my caster, whatever unit I'm currently controlling, manipulate that inventory for me. So I didn't want to do the drag and drop options because I'm actually very terrible with mouse manipulation myself, and it's just so slow. Let me just hope back into the game. If my cursor is targeting something right there, but I need to pass my scroll of portal to this hero, to Torrent, TC, Torrent Chieftain, because it's getting low and I need to save the hero and this provides you with a vulnerability, blah, blah, blah. The way I have to do it, I have to just literally drag my mouse, right click, then drag my mouse and left click. So that takes a non-zero milliseconds amount of time. Plus, that's also annoying because it's one of the actions that I have to do the manual. It's basically too manual for me. And the way I figured this problem out for me, and I implemented this as a module, is if I just press down the control key, which you never use for items, if I just press down the control key and I press basically I just activate the item, it will be automatically dragged and dropped to the position of my cursor. So look at this very carefully. So I place my cursor somewhere here. I hold, let me check that everything's correct. I hold Control and I press Alt Q because that's the ability hotkey. It automatically drops the item on the ground because my cursor was on the ground. If I mouse over the TC and I press Control Alt Q, it will automatically drop the item to the TC. It will pass the item. Alternatively, if I want to sell the item, I can also sell the item because there is no difference. It will basically drop the item on target, whether it is on the ground, whether it is to pass to the hero or to a shop. For the game, it doesn't really matter. It really depends. It really depends on what's on your mouse cursor currently. Warp 10. Oh, I disabled the cheat. Okay, so let me just showcase real quick. So this is me passing it to the ground. Boom. Sorry, I disabled the script. Or I can sell it. So that's a very cool functionality in my opinion. Again, since it's just a macro on top of the game, it doesn't really interact with the game technically. It's slower than it could have been if that functionality was native to the game, if that makes sense. If I were to work at Blizzard, let's say, for some kind of miracle, you could probably do it faster because this motion wouldn't be needed. And this motion, even when done programmatically, takes a non-zero amounts of milliseconds, you see? But it's fast. So this is the showcase for the modules. Do you have any questions, guys, so far? All people don't like something new, I guess, but if it's from StarCraft II, I would recommend this. This is not precisely from StarCraft II. I don't know which game got this first, but that functionality was and still is in StarCraft II. StarCraft II, again, is probably the pinnacle of interface design among all games. I haven't seen a game that is better designed than StarCraft II. And it's a fantastic game in this regard. Okay, so let's go through the philosophy behind the interface. So what is even an interface? So an interface is a bridge for two systems communicating. So let's say I have my phone, or like my phone here, and I have my earplugs right there. So in order for them to somehow communicate between each other, they need an interface. And for this specific device, the interface would be Bluetooth. So if I am to communicate with you in person, I can't transfer my thoughts towards your brain. I can't do that yet. Musk is working on that. Maybe they will implement that later on, but currently the only interface for that communication would be just using your senses and organs. I speak through my mouth, you listen through your ears, You see my facial expressions through your eyes. It goes through your language processing, blah, 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 and then you can understand it. But effectively, it's a bridge between my brain and your brain, and that's how we communicate. So having a fantastic interface is effectively speeding up that connection. So when you have a shitty interface, let's say you have, I mean, most of the Warcraft 3 player base is pretty old, but let's say you have your internet, what it was called, dial-up internet, 56.6 kilobits per minute, per second. I don't even remember, honestly. But that was a shitty bridge for communicating with the internet. It was a shitty bridge. Now we have much better connection, and the world has exploded because of that. So that's a very, very important thing. So in my opinion, the lesser the gap between two systems communicating, the better it is for pretty much everything. There is no advantage that I can think of, unless it's a game design dexterity check. There is no advantage that I can think of for having a worse interface. Now, I know a lot of people might have an argument. Let's say there is StarCraft Brood War, and StarCraft Brood War is brutal in terms of how shitty the interface is. It's even worse than Warcraft 3, and the game also has terrible pathfinding, like absolute garbage. But that works for StarCraft Brood War because people understand that it's a part of the dexterity check of that game. So it's effectively an integral part of the experience, and you understand that the other opponent on the other side of the, I don't know, computer club that is facing you, they have to deal with the same shitty interface. So that becomes equal. And that can work. It's not a big deal when you understand that everyone is on the same playing field. However, on the other hand, we have another argument, which I read, I don't know, like 8 years ago on a game design blog by Serlin, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the name, David, probably Serlin, very famous game designer. And he had an argument that, okay, so your argument is we need dexterity checks or whatever to make this game more playable. Okay, so how about this dexterity check? Just as a thought experiment, okay? As a thought experiment. What if, before you're able to upgrade your town hall, what if you have like your normal game, and before you're able to upgrade your town hall to tier 3, you have to physically stand up from your PC, go to the kitchen, and bake a cake, basically. So you have to go to the kitchen and bake a cake. It will take you 45 minutes to prepare, and then 2 hours to bake. I have no idea how to bake things, so I'm just throwing out numbers. But you get the point. So that will be a part of the competition. It will be a part of the dexterity check. And the playing field, it would be leveled as well, because the other party will have to bake a cake as well. But now the question is, does it even make sense to have that dexterity check as an integral part of the experience? And that question is basically a game design choice. You can have an argument, and you can have an argument against that, but effectively at the very end of that argument is basically a developer saying, look, this is how we've designed it, this is how we think it should be, and this is how it's gonna work from now on forever. Deal with it. You will have to bake your cakes. And then you will either have the player base accepting that, or they will go play League of Legends, whatever. So there are drawbacks, pros and cons to every decision, especially design decision. And that's effectively the never-ending argument. I remember like 8 years ago, there was an update for Legacy of the Void for StarCraft 2, and they tried to remove some macro mechanics from the game. So basically in StarCraft 2, you have this mechanic that you have like your pawns, and they mine gold, but every 30 seconds you have to select an ultra pawn and do something else with it. So that's just basically it's an attention sink. If you understand some game design, it's an attention sink, and some people don't like it. And when you have a lot of attention sinks, it just becomes very hard. It becomes very hard to play because all you do is you manage your things, right? Because everything requires your attention all the time. Everything requires your attention all the time. And some people just don't like it. And I've read a lot of comments on Reddit in my life because I've been using it for like 12 years. And especially in game design forums and RTS games. Some people just, look, I play video games to chill. I don't understand why I should sweat out 250 APM for no reason. I just want to play the game, And that's a fair argument because some people do like, the thing is that people do like strategy games, but they're actually technically very hard to control and play because everything requires your attention, and the very intelligence that makes us drawn to strategy games because they're beautiful in its depth, they're beautiful in its complexity. And as a person who can understand abstract complexities, that makes this outlet for thought and entertainment very compelling. Therefore, but then you start playing it and you realize that you play at 49 APM and you get steamrolled by a Silver League player because he just plays faster and he has, 10 Marines more than you. You press a click, they press a click, and you die because you just have less stuff. Such is life. This is very demoralizing for most people, and I understand this like no one else because I personally started from bronze leagues and I gradually worked on towards masters. But I understand that it's a part of the game. Some people don't like it, and I think, in my opinion, RTS games still are very popular because strategy games are very popular. But the amount of players that are willing to deal with this dexterity checks is very small. Because it's very fun to watch. You hop onto back to StarCraft stream and you just, there is Sock playing versus Happy, and then you can watch Grubby stream or something like this. It's a lot of fun. But when you try it yourself, you understand how terrible your play is, and it's just painful. So my attempt to decrease that pain from very high to somewhat moderate is to develop a better interface. Because what a better interface does is it shrinks the gap between our intent, what we want to do, what we want to happen, and from the intent to the actual execution. So imagine in game, you would have to click only one unit. Like you couldn't box units at all. You could only select every single unit individually. So in order for you to send 50 units, you will have to do the 50 actions in order to do whatever. That would, most people would say it's an overkill, but you can say it's a part of the game and deal with it, right? So there is the line is somewhere between infinite, or maybe it's infinite units, whatever infinite units you want to send, and one, because you can do less than one. Wouldn't make any sense. So a better interface allows you to shrink that gap from your, I want to send 50 units, but I can only send 12 units, and therefore I do it slower. If I could just send 50 units instantly with my, brain thoughts, then that would be the perfect interface, because I could just control my game with my mind, whatever. Like you probably can envision what I'm envisioning right now in my mind, but that would be the perfect interface. We can't have it right now, but there is a difference between the classic interface, let's say the custom interface, and Displaced Grid with modules, or at least with the functionality that it provides. Because what it allows us is to shrink that gap between our intent, what we want to do, what we want to have happened to our actual execution, and this will result in more players actually playing the game instead of being just followers and viewers on Twitch. Because when our intent and our execution aligns, we just feel better. We just feel happier. It doesn't feel like I just have less stuff. I feel outplayed because he's smarter. When I get outplayed because of the strategical or tactical decisions, I don't really feel bad. I mean, I do kind of get discouraged from the defeat because I am a human being. But when I get beaten by a Grandmaster player because he has 50% more units than I do because I just play slower, that is kind of discouraging, personally. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are in the same boat. So by developing a better interface, we solve that problem. So that's the philosophy behind this work. Is it possible to use in Dota 2? No. This is exclusively Warcraft 3 layout. It wouldn't realistically, it wouldn't be needed in Dota 2 because a lot of hotkeys, most of the hotkeys can be just reassigned within the regular confinements of Dota 2. Like Dota 2 client is very good at hotkey manipulations, and you don't need any auto hotkey, you don't need any image overlays, you don't need anything. For Dota 2, most people struggle with how to arrange their hotkeys, especially their item hotkeys. And for Dota 2, there is a very interesting layout that I've designed, and I've been using it for many years, which might be interesting for some people if they struggle with intuitively logical hotkey placement in that game. So so effectively, Displaced Grid, as it is right now for Warcraft 3, wouldn't be transferable to any other experience. On your screen, you can see the original grid layout. Very intuitive layout in terms of hotkeys. So your control group 1 on 1, control group 2 on 2, control group 3 on 3, and you have your typical QWERTY layout with the grid. So I like grid quite a lot. I like it. However, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Warcraft 3, and especially as an advanced layout. Why is that? Because grid is designed for simplicity. I even have this outline here. Grid is a hotkey layout designed for simplicity. It's very good for beginners and casual players, and it's better than the classic layout, but it's not an advanced hotkey layout. I can guarantee you at 100%, once you switch from, say, from this grid as it is implemented in Warcraft 3 to something more advanced like Displaced Grid, your APM will increase by 50%. Doing nothing. You just have to adjust your hotkeys, spend like a week or two getting used to these hotkeys, and then your APM will increase realistically from like 40 to 100%. And in fact, the lower your APM is right now, the higher it will increase in terms of ROI. So what's Displaced Grid? So Displaced Grid, as I mentioned, is a layout on top of the original grid. And the way it's inspired by the work of Jack Tack for StarCraft 2, and specifically the Core Light, but it's different from the Core Light in many important ways. So effectively, the one thing that is comparable is how the control groups are laid out. So the control groups in the Core Light layout and in Displaced Grid layout are Q, W, A, S, Z, and X. 99.99% of the population, they use something like 1 for 1 control group, 2 for 2 control group 3 would be on 3, and so on. Very few people would just think, oh no, that makes no sense. Let me just use Q and W for my production facilities and town halls. But as a person who actually have used the Core Light for 2 years, and as a person who have increased his APM by approximately 50%, which is me, I can guarantee you guys from my personal experience that this layout is faster because you use more fingers when you manipulate your keyboard. So effectively, this is a better interface for the game, but it's also better interface between your hands and the keyboard, because the keyboard is the layout that you're using. Your production would go on your Q or W, and your town halls would go on your Q or W, whatever you want to use. And then when you have to train a unit, you would press W, press D for footman, another D for footman, and then you tab with another finger. So you're using all three different fingers, which makes it very ergonomically convenient, logically sound, and just quicker, because you use three different fingers, what is called, to train units. Your abilities would go on E, R, T, and Y. And Y is a very interesting hotkey because it's pretty far away, but actually in Warcraft 3, you don't really use your ultimates much. You don't really using it much. So effectively, you have an extremely compact layout because all your hotkeys, like, you don't ever move your hand. You just press your hand on like a caps lock, whatever, and you can, I mean, unless you have very tiny hands, you never move your hand on the keyboard. That makes it very ergonomical, and you use all the 5 fingers when you manipulate your game with all these 5 fingers through this layout, which is not possible with Grid, which is not possible with Classic at all. Ideally, we would want to have our ability keys align with our trained units keys, but it's not possible because if you look in game, the trained units, what is that? Let me check. Trained units is on the first row right there, you see? The trained units on the first row, but your abilities are on the bottom row. So they're not aligned on the command card, so we can't align them on the layout, which can be solved if you use custom input, but when you use custom input, you can't use quick casts. So it's either quick casts or a more sensical layout, which is very, very unfortunate, and I hope Blizzard will enable either of the two. Either ability quick casts for custom input, or allow us to rearrange the thing, but realistically rearranging the command card would be still custom input. So essentially they need to make that your ability quick casts work for custom input and not just Grid input. That's a very complicated explanation, but that's, believe me, it was very complicated to understand everything on my own. Also, on original Grid, you have your heroes on F1, F2, and 3, which is on most keyboards is pretty far away, especially on most, bigger keyboards like Black Widow. I used Razer Black Widow for like 5 years myself. The F keys are on the moon. They're on the other planet. It's so far away. And it took me a long time to get used to it when I played StarCraft. However, when you push the hotkeys from the original Grid for the heroes from F1, F2, and then 3 to 1, 2, and 3, then on most keyboards, you save a ton of space. Like if you take a look at your keyboard, unless it's some custom build, some very expensive custom built mechanical keyboard, which is very, very compact, on most keys, F keys are very far away comparatively to 1, 2, 3, and other digits, the digits row. So which makes it again more ergonomical. When you have your abilities on E, R, and T, it makes it very ergonomical because you have your heroes on 1, 2, and 3, and your abilities on E, R, and T, which is again very close. Plus, you can also use your pinky to tab through your units and press E, R, tab, R, E, tab, whatever. It's very, very easy because you use all the 5 fingers of your palm for the items. You use Q, W, A, S, and ZX, which aligns, which is basically a layer on top of your control groups when you press Alt key. In Warcraft 3, I actually did 7 iterations of this design. And in Warcraft 3, you don't really use your items a lot. You do use your items, but you don't really use all the 6 items all the time, and they don't need to be instantly accessible. If you were to play, say, something like Dota, then of course that would require a different design, because you would need your hotkeys on the same priorities, if not more, as your abilities are. But in Warcraft 3, the quick access, you need to scroll teleportation, invulnerability potion, maybe dispel. That's about it. So it doesn't really warrant having all the 6 keys, because 6 keys is a lot of keys. It doesn't really warrant to have your item abilities on a top layer of your keyboard. So I put it under the second layer, so you can use your alt as a modifier, so you can call the items. And I know for a fact that it's not a big deal, because most Warcraft 3 players, especially Dota 1 players, and even Heroes of Neverth players, they have been using their items on an alt modifier for like 10 plus years. No one uses the numpad for items anymore, but most people have their alt items on QWEASD, something like this, which is okay, I think, for like HoN, Heroes of Neverth, and Dota 2, although I'm kind of against it myself. But it doesn't make a lot of sense if we'll take a look at the backpack in game in Warcraft 3. You see that it's aligned vertically, so it's 3 rows but only 2 columns. Therefore, by aligning it with Q, W, A, and S, and Z, and X, and on top of the control groups, it just makes a lot of logical sense. To me, it just makes a lot of sense. Therefore, this is the design choice that I have committed to. Warcraft 3 is one of the godfathers of not only the RTS genre, but competitive gaming in general. And it comes to no surprise that it's one of the most hotkey-intensive games there is. So you click a lot, and because you click a lot, and there are a lot of dexterity checks, your intent and your execution do not match. And the worse player you are mechanically, the bigger that gap is. And that's very discouraging, and that's why a better interface is warranted. This is how the application looks like. It's an auto hotkey application, which I'm going to publish at the end of this stream. And this is how it's going to look like in your tray. So you right click on your tray and you will be greeted with this menu. Modules design follow the same logic of bridging the gap explained earlier. This is the talk about the interfaces. So please understand, once again, using the modules against an unaware player is technically cheating. We're not supposed to have this functionality in a normal game, because modules massively improve your ability to interact with the game. Therefore, they provide a competitive advantage. Modules are optional to use. You don't have to use any of this. You can just use the layout if you just want to use the layout. Or you can use modules. So basically the Displaced Grid layout and the modules, which are inside of the same application, these are completely separate. You can use either of the two, or both, or none of it. Modules will work even with the normal layout, no problem. You can easily turn it off or deactivate, and all the instructions are on this website. You get Displaced Grid layout, which is again an advanced layout designed for Warcraft 3. You get quick cast for abilities, at least the instructions for it. It's actually there. You just select grid, go to Warcraft 3 preferences.txt, and you change every quick cast 0 to quick cast 2. And then you will instantly have ability quick cast in your Warcraft 3 setup. It doesn't require this application at all. You can do it right now. How to run the app itself. So you need to download AutoHotkey 1, because apparently there is a second AutoHotkey, second version of the AutoHotkey application right now. You need the first one. So you click here, you click download, and you download this one, which says deprecated. Okay. You download Displaced Grid release from GitHub. It will be under this link, or you can click any other buttons. They will be red and they will be accessible at the end of the stream. Then there will be a file that is named run this file, because apparently I did some playtesting and apparently I need to do this. Run this file, displacedgrid.ahk, with AutoHotkey. So This stands for Auto Hotkey. So, and this Displaced Grid application will appear in your tray menu. Tray menu is the menu where you have this tiny, tiny buttons, tiny, tiny icons where your time zone and current time is. So that's called tray menu. This icon will appear, and this icon is the Displaced Grid. Okay. If you right click on this icon in your tray menu, you'll be greeted with this menu. Okay. Hope that makes sense. You can turn it on and off very quickly. The Displaced Grid default hotkey for its activation is scroll lock, because I personally don't use scroll lock for anything else, and scroll lock is very close to enter. And when I need to quickly type into chat, I press scroll lock, enter, blah, 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 enter, scroll lock. Makes it very convenient. Again, it's not perfect because, again, of course, I would prefer to have this layout inbuilt, but we can't. So this is the best design decision that I found. Again, with this application, you absolutely need something like an image overlay, because getting used to a new hotkey layout is difficult, especially when you can't see the hotkeys. So I designed, I mean, it's not very hard design. It's just basically a PNG transparent image that is layered on top of your Warcraft 3, and it displays only when Warcraft 3 is active, and it basically says which hotkeys you have to press in order to get the desired outcome. Very important, this image is aligned for the full HD resolution, because this is the resolution that I personally use, and I think most people use this kind of resolution. If you play on different resolution, then you can either change your resolution, which would make no sense, or you can just change the image to your resolution, which is much faster and just makes a lot more sense. How to set up modules. So some modules do require very precise pixel coordinates to work. Otherwise, they will not work. Because, for example, we can see that an item is on cooldown by its blue countdown overlay. So let me just quickly hop into the game. I need some sort of item with a cooldown. Maybe this one will do. So we can see, just by this blue overlay, we can see that an item is on cooldown. So we can make the program see a blue, like the blue overlay, and will determine that the item is on cooldown, which is going to help us to use some of the modules. So in order to set it up, you will have to do some magic, clearly magic, because you'll have to do basically just go into a game, use an item like this, take a screenshot, just take a bunch of screenshots like this with print screen, upload it into Paint, and figure out this pixel. Like, you have to do this in order for certain modules to work, especially for the quick casting modules, because what the quick backcasting module does, it screens for this pixel, this exact pixel, which is weird because it's the only one pixel on the entire screen. And then it can determine, first, whether or not the item is on cooldown, and second, whether or not you do even have an item on the slot. So that's a very finicky, very fragile solution, but it works. It works. And this way you can use your abilities, items, item hotkeys. And let me just quickly jump onto a human showcase, and just gonna showcase quickly with this paladin. So if I want to, let's say, send out a unit back to safety with my Staff of Sanctuary, I press Alt Q and it will instantly do it. And because I have this module enabled and it does check that the item is on cooldown, and it does check that I do have the item, I can just press it again and it works as intended. Because trust me, if you don't set up the module, what's going to happen, it will attempt to use the item and will also left click because it sends an extra left click on the unit, because in order to do the pseudo quick cast, you have to activate the ability and press the left click. So what's going to happen if you don't set up the module, or if you don't properly, give me a second. If you don't properly set up this module effectively, what's going to happen is it will work once, like this. I have the other module. So basically, there's a lot of synergy between the modules, so it didn't work. So effectively, if I press it now, it will start selecting my units sometimes, because I'm pseudo quick casting. So just do this. Alt, Shift, Q, Shift A, Shift S, Shift Z, Shift X. And you can see what keys I'm holding. I haven't let go of my Shift key even once, and I haven't pressed my left key even once. So that's the power of quick casts. So you have to set it up properly. If you don't, it will not work. And please pay attention to this guide. Unfortunately, for some reason, when I'm streaming on the website, like, I can see this MP4 on my screen right now, but it's not being it's like I can't see it on my OBS for some reason. Can you see it, guys? I think you can. It's just when I'm tabbing out. So this is an MP4 instruction for how to figure out what kind of pixels and how to find and what to find on your screen, so the program understands what to look for. Again, it's a very finicky, very fragile solution, but it works. I understand that some people are not familiar with software, but again, the only technical skills you need to do is to take a screenshot, paste it in Paint, and just see where the coordinates are. It's not complicated, guys, I swear. And then you will have to change these coordinates, which are provided in user settings, to your user interface. Because again, if you play on a different resolution, like I can't do it for you effectively. This is the setup for control groups, whether or not you want to add it to the caps lock, control multiple groups kind of thing. This is camera. Camera will jump instantly if you put it on true. And well, that's about it. And you can also disable every single module if you don't want to use them at all. They will just disappear from the application once you change true to false. They will just disappear, and you can use either only the modules or either only the Displaced Grid as a layout. So you're free to do whatever. It's very, very simple to change, and every single user setting is in this file user setting, which will be on the root, in the root folder, right? So it will be run this file in order to run Displaced Grid, and user setting will be right underneath it. Very simple, just two files. One to run the application, and second is to set up the application to your machine. And yeah, that's about it. So that is Displaced Grid with all the modules, with talk about game design. If you have any other questions, we can discuss it right now. But if you don't have any questions, I think we are done. And I'm gonna upload this VOD to my YouTube channel. I'm gonna also upload this VOD to like Warcraft 3 subreddit, and that's going to be the end of it. Whatever you want to use, you can use. If you don't want to use any of it, you're free. All the links are here. And yeah, that's Displaced Grid. That's the presentation for Displaced Grid. Advanced Hotkey Layout for Warcraft 3, plus 7 additional UX modules for even faster control. And I promise, if you actually start using it and you get used to it, eventually your APM will increase by like from 40% to 100%, really depends on your skill, because this is an interface. And my goal was to bridge the gap between the intent and the actual execution. And the more you're currently struggling with the execution part, the more help you will get out of this application. So it's in your interest to kind of get into it. Synesthesia, check the core for advanced key bindings. Well, I actually did check the core before I started working on this myself. And apparently for Warcraft 3, there was no core. I couldn't find it. That's why I started developing it for Warcraft 3. But I did use the core light myself for StarCraft 2. When I played StarCraft 2, I did use it. And it's really a game changer. Jack Attack and his team, whoever was involved into this project, are absolute geniuses, and their work is a big advancement in interface design, in my opinion. So I really heavily respect them. Okay, so only positive comments so far. The game needs this, and if it prevents people from setting up complicated AutoHotkey configs, that's a good thing. Unfortunately, how can you, like, think about it, how it is possible to circumvent not using AutoHotkey? Because in the game, we can't really remap our hotkeys. It's just not possible. So we have to use an external tool in order to remap the hotkeys. We can't, like, think about it. If the functionality is not within the core of the game, then we have to use a third-party application to have a layer on top of the core game and remap it this way. Therefore, it's a cursed problem. The modules seem not to be much different from scripting, which I think is a legitimate reason to ban unless they're not customizable. Everything is customizable. The code is open source, and it's just a simple, I mean, not very simple, but it's an AutoHotkey script that everyone can look into. These are features the game should have. I completely agree. These are the features that the game should have as a core experience in order to have more players literally playing the game. In my opinion, RTS games really suffer from the fact that the interface design is very outdated, and that's why people can't really get into RTS games to the same extent as they can get into League of Legends or anything like that. Okay, all right. Seems like we're done for today. Thank you guys. Thank everyone for coming and checking out Displaced Grid and this work. I will publish this VOD on YouTube, and it will also be available on my Twitch page.